We will next look at some conventions, actually international conventions, for free and quality education to which Pakistan is a signatory. What do these mean? It simply means that provision of free and compulsory elementary education for all human beings has been declared a fundamental right. All of these conventions that we will be looking at have one thing in common. They want all children anywhere in the world to receive free and compulsory basic primary or elementary education. The first convention we are looking at is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, approved by the world nations at the United Nations General Assembly in 1948. And according to this convention, what they recommend is everyone has the right to education, and education shall be free, at least in the elementary and fundamental stages. Elementary education shall be compulsory. There are three things that we need to look at. Elementary and basic education includes education which involves the preschool, the early years, and education up to at least grade 5. So, all children under this convention are guaranteed an education from nursery through grade 5, and it is supposed to be free, which means the government will be paying for this, somebody will be sponsoring that education. It will not be a burden on the child's family, and it will be compulsory, which means all children that are aged, that should be in schools, nursery through grade 5, should be in schools all the time for all those 7 grade levels. The second convention that we are looking at is the Convention on the Rights of the Child. In 1989, explicitly this convention recognized education as a fundamental right in the following article. States parties recognize the right of the child to education, and with a view to achieving this right progressively and on the basis of equal opportunity, they shall in particular, and we will look at that in a minute. But there are two things I would like to focus over here. One is progressively. You can't jump. You can't suddenly bring a child and say, sit in class 4. The child has missed the previous years. So all children, yes, must be in school, must be in classes, and they must progressively move from one grade to another. And the second thing here is equal opportunity. Doesn't matter what family background, what socioeconomic status the child comes from. The child will be guaranteed an education. So the elements of this convention say, make primary education compulsory and available free to all. Again, it is reiterating, it is reinforcing what the UN Convention earlier said. Free and compulsory elementary primary education for all students. Encourage the development of different forms of secondary education, including general and vocational. So what this human rights thing says over here is that education for children does not necessarily stop at elementary or primary level. Children must progress into secondary level education, whether it is general or whether it is vocational is not important. After all, we need the electricians and the plumbers and the carpenters and the mechanics and all that. And if a child can be one of those pieces of society, it will help the child be independent. It will help the child earn a living. It will help the child not depend on other people for his food, his income, his livelihood. And so, if we want independent people in the future, we will have to make sure that we provide opportunities for children to further their education at the secondary level through general education opportunities and opportunities for vocational education. The third convention that we are looking at is, in April of 2000, more than 1,100 participants from 164 countries gathered in Dakar, Senegal, for the World Education Forum and unanimously resolved to promote education for all. Education for all has actually become a slogan since then. And what the participants agreed to do was to set goals that would guarantee that by certain time frames, education for all would actually be a reality, not only in the developed and developing world, but also in the underdeveloped world. And the target they set was for 2015. We are already in 2016 now. As we go through some of these targets, you will see that Pakistan has not met most of those targets set 15 years ago as goals for education for all. These are some of the education for all goals. Expanding and improving comprehensive early childhood care and education. So yes, although the previous conventions recommended and also sustained the compulsory and free education at the elementary level, 15 years later, you can't be doing the same things. Times have changed, technology has changed, gadgetry in the hands of our students have changed, and education must change. So there is a need to improve the comprehensive basic primary education. Number 2, ensuring that by 2015, all children, particularly girls, in difficult circumstances and those belonging to ethnic minorities, receive an education. So 2015 was the target. This was set in 2000. 15 years was given to countries and nations to develop strategies so that that will be a reality. Forget universal primary education. Forget boys, forget girls. In Pakistan, we don't have all our children going to schools, even today, in the early years and in elementary education. We have not met this target. It is time somebody, especially at the policy-making levels, opens up and sees the realities of where we are, who are we competing with, what countries have made it to this target, what can we learn from those countries that have made it to this target, and how can we ensure maybe in the next 5 or next 10 years that yes, all our children will be in school and education for all will be a reality even in Pakistan. The third goal is ensuring that the learning needs of all young people and adults are met through equitable access to appropriate learning and life skills. Now, as I said earlier, education will not end at the primary level. So what do young people need? If they need to be successful and make a better future for themselves, they will need to carry on into secondary education. And every child should have equitable access. No child should say, I have no school in my area, or the nearest school is so far, my parents won't allow me to go. There is poor transport, there is poor infrastructure. How am I going to get to the school that is 6 miles away from where I live? And so, if we want equitable access, we will have to improve our infrastructure and make it possible for all children to get an education. Fourth, achieving a 50% improvement in levels of adult literacy by 2015. Based on 2000, whatever the adult literacy was in a particular nation, 15 years later in 2015, they wanted to see, the target was 50% improvement. We don't have, even all our adults are not literate. Our literacy rate is still 50-some%. Looking at the figures that are provided to us, obviously many people believe that it is much lower than that. If we want our adult population also to be actively involved in the learning and education of the younger population, they will at least have to be literate. 5. Eliminating gender disparities in primary and secondary education by 25. Only 5 years were provided for gender disparity to go away from schools, which means boys and girls both would be in schools. And achieving gender equality in education by 2015, which means the same number of boys and same number of girls would be in schools. So removing this gender disparity, allowing our young girls also to go to schools, was a target set first for 2005 and then for 2015, where equality was the number. And we have not achieved that. This is another goal where Pakistan has failed. What are we going to do? We need to look at countries in our region of the developing world that have made it, that have improved, that have come close to achieving these targets for themselves. 6. Improving all aspects of the quality of education and ensuring excellence of all, so that recognized and measurable learning outcomes are achieved by all. Improving education, and that's not a simple task. It is quite a complex task, because to improve education, what are you going to improve? Your facilities, your teacher training, your schools, your curriculum, your examination, testing, assessment systems. There is all that to improve, and unless all that is improved, quality of education across the board is not going to change. Certainly, it includes better textbooks, materials for students, of course, things like using the internet and bandwidth and the virtual world and the reality there. All that needs to be looked at. So it's not an easy task. It's not a simple task. Proper committees need to be established to look at where we are, where we want to be, in what time frame we can get there, and how we will be able to achieve that for our students. The 4th convention, in September 2000, world leaders adopted United Nations Millennium Goals. Remember, 2000 was not only the turn of the century, it was also the change in the millennium, from the 2nd to the 3rd millennium. And they consisted of 8 Millennium Development Goals for education and for the betterment of the welfare of the population and citizenship of a country. First, the Millennium Development Goals. Eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. No child is going to be able to study if the child is hungry. We need to feed our population, only well-fed populations on a balanced diet, getting all the required nutrition and nutrients will be able to contribute to their learning and education. 2. Achieve universal primary education. Universal across the globe. Every country, nation, territory, primary education up to grade 5 should be compulsory, mandatory, free, and should be achieved. 3. Promote gender equality and empower women. Equal access to primary and post-primary education for girls. Gender equality, especially in countries like Pakistan, where boys can be sent to school because boys are looked upon as being more productive in their grown-up years, as being heads of families, as leaders of families, as the people who are responsible for feeding and providing for their families. But according to the Millennium Development Goals, girls can do the same thing, and they can only do it if they receive education. So equality, gender equality in education was another goal that was set. Reduce child mortality. Mortality is the death rate. Lots of young children die because of diseases, poor health care, poverty, hunger, not enough food, malnutrition, and so on and so forth. We need to look at that, and we need to get sure that we can eradicate these in order for young people to survive and receive good education. Improve maternal health was number 5. The health of mothers. Good, healthy mothers will breed good, healthy children. Combat HIV, AIDS, malaria, and other diseases. And in our case, it could even be dengue. Whatever diseases affect an area, they should be combated. 7. Ensure environmental sustainability. Reduce by half those without access to safe water. Yes, we've polluted waters, we've polluted land, we've polluted the air. Environmental safety is crucial, important, and essential. What are we going to do? How are we going to make sure that all our young people, actually the entire population of a country, receives safe drinking water? And 8, develop a global partnership for development. More aid, more debt relief, access to essential drugs, and good governance. In other words, cooperation. How do we learn to live and survive together so that our children will have a good, healthy life and thereby receive good, healthy education?